Assistant Trial Attorney Jamie White. Jamie, even without the audio of this video, you are seeing someone who would go on the next day to shoot the person that he's upset with in this Facebook Live. He's just telling his followers how upset he is with Alex Palencia. Your thoughts on what this speaks to the jury?
You know, I always try to take the opposite point of view just for the sake of the viewers seeing that we have a system that requires balance, right? This one is impossible. You know, this gentleman, for lack of better terms, has already laid out, you know, his criteria for what his facilities were to commit this sort of act. And in fact, did commit this act. You know what's so funny? Well, it's certainly not funny. I apologize for that, saying that. But, you know, I did criminal defense law for 10, 15 years-ish. And I'm hearing this sort of arguments that, you know, there was a lack of language issues and that sort of thing. And I could tell you my experience was I have so many memories of walking into a jail cell to see a gentleman who had not spoken English, quote unquote. And, you know, when I got to certain words like prison, then the English kicked in. I'm not saying that is or is not the fact here, but, you know, this is an extraordinarily troubling set of circumstances, and I'd be surprised if he's not convicted as charged.
I think one of the issues inside a courtroom, especially when you're having to choose, when you're bilingual and having to choose your native language, you have to stick with it. You can't do a mixture. You have to use your interpreter only. So I think that's what we're seeing play out, is that he can understand some of what the prosecutor is saying in his interpreter. He's not agreeing with the way it's coming through.
Still with us, trial attorney Jamie White. Jamie, okay, let's just get your take on what happened here. Justin, really? Taking responsibility, accepting responsibility for his actions, just saying and letting people know, even if you've had one drink, don't get behind the wheel of a car. He talked about how he holds himself to a high standard, and this was not the kind of behavior that he thought was becoming of himself.
Yeah, so two points of view on this one, guys. So first of all, congratulations to Mr. Timberlake for doing what's appropriate under these circumstances, and that is acknowledging that a mistake was made. You know, these situations, unfortunately, could often be very, very more serious. Ultimately, you know, we have death cases where the same scenario could have played out. That's not the case here. So I congratulate Mr. Timberlake on his comments, but I guess I take some exception with, first of all, this is a very common plea deal. Drunk driving goes to impaired driving. It's a fine. Maybe there's some classes involved. I'm not suggesting it's not a serious matter, but I'm suggesting there's nothing unusual about this. And what kind of threw me off, guys, was his attorneys initially really defended his actions to some degree. There was almost a scientific argument about the amount of alcohol he drank, and ultimately, what I heard from this was their address and how close it was to the approximate, you know, to where all this occurred. So I you know, initially was thrown off where this was going, but I think JT, my wife's a huge concert junkie, and I think she was just at one of his shows a few weeks ago. I don't know, but you know, he's a great guy, and he made a mistake. I don't think there's a family in this country that has not been touched by this sort of experience, and I give him a huge amount of credit for taking responsibility, and hopefully that people learn from it.
So, Jamie, cameras weren't inside of this New York courtroom, but we are now getting details about what was happening there. We had Court TV team members who were inside, but during the court hearing, the judge actually expressed some disappointment with this proposed plea deal that prosecutors offered to Justin Timberlake, and the judge questioned the appropriateness of what we just saw, that public service announcement that Timberlake was intending to make right after the court proceedings. So the judge knew that it was about to happen and was concerned that it didn't give him proper time to reflect on his actions. So for that reason, apparently the judge added community service requirements to this sentence. What do you think about the judge not liking how this presser public service announcement went?
Well, I think with Justin Timberlake, Mr. Timberlake's platform, I'm not a judge, certainly, probably never will be, but I think that, there's just better opportunities to use his platform, and his attorneys did not do him any favors, in my opinion, and I suspect, I could be wrong, and I'll probably get grief for this, but I suspect that same argument and behavior happened in the courtroom. This is an opportunity where you don't argue this case. You're wrong. How do I make it right? And I think the judge got the same smelling salt that I got, that like, hey, we don't need to order him to do this. And I'm not suggesting that Mr. Timberlake wouldn't have done this on his own accord. But it sounds like things went a little sideways for various reasons. And that reflects the judge's opinion from my point of view.
Yeah, it's always interesting, and we're just getting word about that right now, that when a judge does do that, because when you go up, when you're practicing and then you walk up and you tell the judge what you guys have agreed to, what both sides have agreed to, and then when the judge says, ooh, hold on, wait a minute, I'm not too crazy about this idea. As the prosecutor, sometimes you're like, ooh, shoot, maybe I needed to do more here.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right on point. I think, and again, I don't know Mr. Timberlake's lawyers. I certainly don't know Mr. Timberlake, but, there's a different way I've certainly represented high-profile personalities in the past, and, you get in front of these things, and especially when nobody got hurt, thank God, you don't need a judge to order you to acknowledge that this was a mistake. This is something the lawyer should have been doing for him. And I wasn't in the courtroom, but it appears that did not occur.
All right, Jamie, thank you so much for your insight on that. But yeah. Big deal to hear Justin Timberlake speak and hear what he had to say.
And we'll see if we hear anything else in his music or in his public performances about what he said here today.
Maybe a new song.